Suddenly had a double tank failure. It goes from total breathing to suddenly nothing. It's just the whole thing is just frozen. I was not going to make it. I was going to drown.
All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. We're really looking forward to this episode because we've got someone we both, me and Jam, both know well, Mr. James Allen. James, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Hello, everybody.
Thank you, James. Yeah, so talking about James is extraordinary. You know, when I say extraordinary, he do things that we never even think of doing. And so it's great privilege to have a chat. And more than that, he's a great guy, and I consider him as one of my good mates,
thanks, James.
one of the best mates,
Yeah,
you know.
same.
And so we kind of met when Dylan was in year 10, 9, yeah,
Even earlier than that.
earlier than that. So
8.
Dylan and James' son Barney studied at school together. So then that's how I met James, and we kind of know James for last.
We connected almost straight away. We were right on the edge of the field. I remember it.
That's it.
And we were like, they started talking. We was like, oh, we've got a lot in common.
Yeah, we got a lot of in common. Like, you know, in our own ways, we are both adventurous.
Yeah.
We like adventures, you know.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking your time, James, having a chat with us.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
I suppose we should give you a bit of backstory about who the James Allen is.
Please.
So I did a bit of research, wrote down some of your accomplishments just in the adventure world.
Yeah.
So you've conquered all of the 7 summits.
Yep.
You've climbed 6 volcanoes.
7 volcanoes.
7
Done
volcanoes.
the volcanoes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've been to the South Pole.
Been to the South Pole, which we'll maybe talk about, and I've tried for 6 years in a row to go to the North Pole. 5 years in a row, and hopefully next year I'll go. Each time something happens.
That's unreal.
So I've just come back from there, actually, just come back from Siberia, and we can probably talk about that as well.
Absolutely, we'd love to. And
Dealing
then,
with failure.
yeah, probably the biggest one, which I remember very clearly. I think it was one of the first times I met you. It was at your place. Went in, gave you a handshake, and I was like, something doesn't feel quite right. And then I remember you showed me, and you told me the story behind the frostbite in your fingertips from when you climbed Everest, and I was like, wow. And then you were like, at the time, you were the youngest Westerner to climb the death face.
Yeah, I think I was like, no, the records weren't really kept for those things, and I didn't know like age wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, I took a sombrero to the top because everybody was kind of being the first to do something, and
Yeah.
I was in Kathmandu, and I was like, oh, I've got the sombrero. Like, I can't be the first, person from Australia or whatever. And so I said, I'll be the first to wear a sombrero on the summit.
Yeah.
As it turned out, I had issues on the summit, so I forgot to actually take the sombrero out. And when I came down, like to the 2 guys I was with, were one of them in particular was in a lot of bad shape, and I was just happy to get him down.
Yeah.
And Nazu, my Turkish guy, came up to me and said, oh man, that's incredible what you've done. I went, yeah, gee, like, it's a big couple of days. There were only 3 of us at that stage on the top mountain, 8 on the whole mountain, so very different from now. No one there, and on the route that, no ropes, all that sort of stuff, new route. And it came down, and I said, yeah, man, it was a big day. A big few days, and he said, no, everybody your age has died who's gone.
Wow.
And I was like, what? No one told me this.
So
He
you're
said,
only 23 then, right?
I was 22. In fact,
22, wow.
Weirdly, today is my anniversary day of 20, whatever it will be.
Wow.
29,
No way.
29 years ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah, 29 years ago. So long
Wow.
time.
Wow.
That's unreal.
Yeah, so
It's
that
great
was
timing.
before the sort of professional stuff came in and all the stuff you see now happen, with lots of people going up there. So then it was like, it was Wild West. So
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
good.
That's unreal. And is there, I'm sure there's many others. Do you want to touch on, is there anything major that I missed?
Lots of sailing stuff, lots of scuba diving stuff, lots of forest and desert stuff. Things that aren't sort of the hero lists.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm an explorer, not an adventurer. And
Yeah.
there aren't many explorers.
Yeah, yeah.
So an adventurer kind of follows what something's done before. I kind of go, when you see a map, like a map behind me, you see lots of dots and rivers, lots of names. I go to the spaces in between those dots and rivers.
Nice.
So the places that no one's really been to.
You discover things.
Yeah, and most of the trips I do, it doesn't mean anything to
Yeah,
them
yeah.
because it's not on a list that they've heard of. when I come back, it's difficult to talk to people about it because you're the first one to have done it, so they don't really know why you're doing it and those sort of things. So, for instance, I'm just this morning I was trying to get my application to Pakistan for next week because I found I had 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks spare between another trip. So I thought, well, I could have talked down in Melbourne next week. I thought I could fly to Pakistan, Islamabad, but I want to get to. I've always been fascinated about this thing called the Hindu Kush. And if you ever look at Afghanistan comes down and it has a big sort of tongue that goes out towards India, goes east and comes back again. And you've got this sort of zone that's between Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. We've heard about all Tora Bora, all the stuff going through there. And in the late 1800s, the English brought in trout fish.
Right.
Up into that area. So a lot of the rivers are owned in a beat system like the Scottish system. So I thought, well, I could get and I heard that you could get horses up there and there's a high type of horse. So my plan is to fly to Islamabad next week and then take my fishing rod and go across to Afghanistan, see if I can rent or buy a horse and then go and then go up the valleys, which will be awesome, up all through these massive Himalayan mountains and fish and meet the locals for the next few weeks and then come back down to Islamabad and come back here.
This is what I'm talking about, extraordinary, right?
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, I don't know if anybody does
ordinary
that sort of
people
stuff.
like us not even think of this stuff.
Yeah, so
right?
people like so go to your list. People like the hero, 7 summits, 7 volcanoes, and you end up, because you do so much of this stuff, you end up, like as a number, I think I'll be with, someone said if I go to the North Pole, there's only 2 or 3 of us that have done, or maybe no one, certainly no one's done the dangerous routes and soloed these things. So I'll be the only one to do that. But there's not many people in the world that have done those. But that's not really why I do it. I do it because it's an exciting trip. Yeah. And I'm just genuinely, I just love meeting people, different cultures, learning about their culture, learning about the history of the land, and you can form your opinion based on personal experiences. And I like that. So.
James, I think we got to continue having this discussion, talking about your adventure. I mean, that's why we're here for. But I think we have a question, right?
Yeah, we have an opening tradition.
Okay.
And we spoke about it briefly beforehand, but we like to ask our guests, because ultimately that's what this whole podcast is about. What does success mean to you?
Success is a feeling to me. It's not something that you can see or touch. It is a feeling of, for me, a sense of purpose on the planet, of meaningful living. So that means that sometimes success might be like the obvious one that people talk about, certainly in cities, is a monetary success and a token. So you might get you might work really hard and get a big bonus. And that might be, at that feeling that you get is success then. But for me, it's a drive towards what's your ultimate purpose and what you feel at your, the feeling you get as you achieve that. So people can achieve, there's lots of different purposes in the world and there's no right or wrong purpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not to have a purpose, I would probably say would be more wrong than to have a purpose, whatever the purpose happens to be. My purpose happens to be something that's, quite big. And so consequently, I have to keep pushing myself into, or pulling myself in situations where I can get the skills for that. And that drives me and helps me lean into the riskier side of life when, of course, we're all human.
Yep.
And everything inside of us is saying, this is really stupid.
Yeah.
Like go to Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's beautiful out here.
Yeah.
I could go to a great place. I've been away. I think I've only been back in here 20 days this year and we're halfway through it or something. So it's like, I'm paying rent in this place. Why are you going to Pakistan?
Yeah.
This is a great place. You can stay. So all those
you
voices,
look in the beach and go for a surf and,
So everybody has those voices, and that's just learning to control your mind as a tool as opposed to something to drive. So your mind is just another tool, but it can, when you're young on these things, you can listen to your mind rather than just say it's just a tool. And actually, to lean into your sense of purpose, if you really believe that this is what you put on the earth to do and want to do it, no one else is really going to understand it, but really who cares?
Yeah.
Right? And all that criticism and all that negativity of why you're doing this is dangerous, it costs money, why don't you invest in something else, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It goes away and peels away because you're driven towards that purpose. So that would be, you know, having a sense of purpose, driving towards, moving towards that, and leaning into it, and that means you're growing. A bit like when you're trying to do an exam and you don't want to do the exam, but you lean into it, you do the exam, and at the end of it, you feel really rewarded from that.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean that's good because success is quite different, unique to everybody. You know, like how you define your success is quite different to mine, and same with Dylan. So what you describe is very unique to you, right?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I've had so many great lessons. You know, there's lessons come in so many packages, big and small. We tend to remember the big ones, and the big ones, that, you know, that's what people hear about. But there's a lot of small lessons where pretty much every day you're looking at stuff going, God, I learned from that. And I think about when I skied to the South Pole, I shouldn't have gone to the South Pole. I was homeless at the time, had no money. And I kind of was just like, I don't want to tell people. People asked me, what are you doing next? You know, I didn't tell people I was living on the street. And they said, I was actually in my van, and they said, so I said, you know, I'm training to go to the North Pole. And I had to go to the North Pole was a lot of money, let alone logistically, let alone you had to get onto a trip. Like there was just so many things to do that. But I just told everybody I was doing that and sort of believed in it. And right towards the very end, somebody on a 3-man expedition got injured. I suddenly get a call saying, are you still able to go to the North Pole? I'd been badgering them, saying I'm ready. I was training every morning, pulling tires, putting myself in a position that if something happened, I'd be ready. And they were saying, no. So I eventually, I got to ski to the South Pole. And on the South Pole, we did the longest route, pretty much the longest route. There's a couple of longer routes, but it's 16 people had done that route before, I think, and joined this 3-man expedition. And up until that point, I thought, the success was to be happy. You know, like this is a 68 days it took us.
Wow.
Going into a headwind. Yeah, it's really like everything you see, no one's done before. You might start somewhere where somebody might have started, but pretty much everything. You're the first human ever on the planet Earth, because there's no indigenous person ever been there to see a lot of this stuff. And the satellites only do 1 to 25. So I was like, you got to have this happy, positive mindset. But it was interesting because I went on the trip with 2 people I didn't know, and they were completely different. One was like the most negative person you've ever met in your life. And the other, and like just everything was negative. And the other one was just the biggest victim you've ever met in your life. And I was like, gee, you're coming to do this. This is 68 days of 24-hour sunlight, freezing cold, pulling all your stuff day after day after day, and you got to live and work with these people. And initially, for the first couple of weeks, I was like, gee, this is going to be tough. And it just continued. And eventually I got to the North Pole, South Pole. And it was only on retrospect, I was like, we all got there. It doesn't matter if you're happy, if you're a victim, or if your mindset is completely negative on everything. For them and for me, their strategy to get to complete the goal all worked. So up until that point, I thought, the strategy's got to be positive thinking, positive mindset, happiness. This is what I've read. This is who I am.
But they also achieved the same thing.
But they achieved the same thing. So that was a really good insight, a big lesson for me, that actually to achieve your purpose and the strategy to achieve your purpose doesn't necessarily need to be all the kumbaya stuff. It is if you can tune in to who you really are, if you are a big spiritual meditator, Mr. Happy, all that sort of stuff, that's who you are. You got to be true to that. But if actually you are a really negative, evil person, you got to be true to that. And it's kind of like...
And that encourage or push you to achieve the goals.
That's who I am. It's kind of like the frog and the scorpion. That sort of story. If you're the scorpion, be the scorpion. Like people might not like you as a scorpion. You're going to bite them. You're going to always take people down. You're going to do... I wouldn't like that. That's a horrible... You got to stay away from scorpions, but they're scorpions are scorpions. They know who they are, and that's who they are. If you're the frog, you're the frog, but you also know that you got to be careful of letting a scorpion into your life. All those sort of
being authentic is that
being authentic, being true to yourself. So success is a big drive is understanding who you are. And one of the things that I was blessed with is when I went through some of the personal problems, the divorce and other things, I actually spent a lot of time. I was given the time. Up until then, I was running, making money, and that was success, and a bigger house, bigger car, bigger things. But actually, it was only when I was able to stop and go, let me. Well, first of all, probably bad. It's like, I'm going to find out what was happening to her. And after about a week, I was like, hold on, this personal development stuff is so cool. I want to find out what I'm about. And so I then went on this journey for the next year and a half, really like a hermit, studying that. And I think when you know truly more about who you are, then you can give yourself permission to go, I am that type of person. I always come up as the enthusiast, the motivator, the manifester. That's my personality. So I always see the good in everything.
Yep.
And I'm always like, why doesn't everybody see the good in things?
Yeah.
It's just a car accident. It's just a car. You can get another one.
Yeah.
I mean, you're one of the most positive persons I ever come across.
Yeah, and that's what my thing said. I'm like, why isn't everybody like this? But it was only when I kind of worked out who I was like, oh, people aren't like this, and you can say what percentage of people are like me, and it's like tiny, and it's like, oh, so most people actually sit in their misery and don't just jump and then it made me understand, actually, if I get what I was perceiving as negative comments towards what I was doubting, was I doing the right thing? I started to go, well, actually, that's coming from someone else's perspective, and they are a different type of person. So if somebody that's like me says that, then I can lean into that a bit more as a thought. But quite often I'll go, nah, they won't understand. Just as I won't understand, their personality as well as. So that was a really important thing for me to achieve success. Part of the big building blocks for me was to actually give myself permission and give the time to really go through multiple, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, the Tony Robbins, the Oprah, the gurus, all that sort of stuff. It take lots of time to really think, listen, and where does it come from? And that together then with an amazing piece of work that a guy called DeMartini does on purpose, he really crystallized a lot of what is my purpose and why. And within a very short period of time, I was able to go, my purpose clearly is exploring. We did this exercise. We had to write down various things, and I was sitting next to 4 or 5 people in this weekend course. And I wrote down, I said, what do you think of most? What books do you read? What would you like to do? Da, da, da. And clearly I was like exploring up top. And then I had business, and then I had sex. And I was like, I'm a man. It's got to be, that's the order. Exploring, business, sex. Anyway, so I'm sitting back having done my little exercise, and I look back at the guys beside me and I go, did you get explore with your sex? And I'm like, oh, no, they've got family.
Yeah.
Shit. Oh, they've got
all these other things.
Why am I the only? This is not good. So he says, right, who wants to say what they've got on their list? And of course, I'm like, I don't
pick me.
want to say this. I'm thinking, why have I got family? I need to put family on here. I've got 5 kids. Family, why's the family not on here? He says, James, we haven't heard from you. And I'm like, no. Hallelujah, thank you, Lord. So I said, well, I got exploring as my big one, that's the main one. He goes, what else have you got? And I said, I got business. And he said, and the third? And I said, sex. And he's like, oh, that's good. Anybody else got sex? And like 3 people puts that. And I was like, oh my God.
This probably the 3 honest people.
I was like, that's what I was thinking.
At least you weren't the only one.
I know. Anyway, so I think that really helped me understand. And he said, that focus on your number one to give you happiness and to give you success in life. Focus on your number one purpose and give yourself permission to do that. And I was at the point where I think I needed validation from a third party to really let me go, I'm going to surrender into this, because there are many different, there's many different models of success. I'd fortunately made a lot of money early on in my life, lost a lot of money. So I knew that comes and goes. But I knew the happiness I got from doing exploration, personal happiness. I don't really do it for other people to get happy, which is kind of wrong, I guess. But for me, it's more about, this is what I want to do. And my purpose is driven on, I've always believed in world peace. Now, world peace is a massive purpose, right? It's kind of like, I'm going to help create world peace.
Yeah.
That's like, James, and I came to this realization when I was with no money in my car on the beach. I was like, well, how do I create world peace with no money?
Yeah.
I just want to touch on that because there's a book that we both read called Diary of a CEO.
Oh yes, it's
and
good.
he talks about filling your buckets first.
Okay.
And it's that exact point.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure he uses almost the exact same example. He's like, I want to go to Africa and help, eliminate poverty in Africa. But then he talks to a guru, and the guru says like something like, you need to fill your own buckets first.
Yeah, that's what he only the guru said, fill your buckets.
Yeah.
And he had to what's that mean? So he had to figure this out. What's that mean? So then he realized, you can go and trying to change the world, but if your buckets are not filled, and your impact will be limited, right? So the buckets are your knowledge, right? So your network,
Your
and
skills,
your skills, and
your influence.
your influence, right? So, and there's something else, right?
I think it's your wealth.
So the thing is, right, when you have that influence, when you have the wealth, you are in a better position to make a real impact. You know what I mean? Like, you can go as a young man with nothing, you can still do a little bit, right? But your impact will be bigger when you have the buckets full, right? So again, this is something that we
Well,
learned.
it's true because when you're driving, like you see stuff. So I was in Ethiopia a couple of months ago, and I was in a place called Lalibela. And Lalibela is the rock churches you might have seen, the carved out rock churches, Second Jerusalem. Beautiful place, National Geographic type of photograph place. It's in a civil war at the moment in a Marak area. No one's been in there, and I happened to get a ticket in there, and the boar had just gone through 5 days before. And so there's nothing. It's a war-torn area. And I land in this area, and I'm walking around. I'm meeting some of the orphans from the war, and there's also a lot of AIDS orphans. And I get involved in an orphanage project. And so now I'm raising money for an orphanage project for $40,000. People in that area come to the biggest town, which is Lalibela, which has got education and stuff, and that's where they sort of gravitate. And we can raise an orphanage. But I realize on your point is, I was walking through a suburb called Vaucluse here in Sydney, which is kind of a posh suburb yesterday. And I'm walking through there, and it reiterated that, you need to be, there's no point me building one orphanage.
Yep.
If I can create a model where people then, I just need 40 people to spend $1,000 to fly to Lalibela, which no one can get into. And it's an incredible wonder of the world. And if each one of them can have $1,000, that's just 40 people.
Yep.
And I've got this orphanage. And then if I can create a business which that's replicated in other places like this, like maybe in Pakistan there'll be a place, maybe in other locations I go to, India and stuff. So then to build on the Data Zero point, you've filled your bucket because you're able to actually now do many. And if I'm going to create my purpose of world peace, it is orphanages as part of it, but it's not just one orphanage, it's a program of orphanages of which I'm not the brand leader of that.
Yeah.
It's a machine. Like, what part of your engine works? It all works. And a kind of that's where I want to be, the oil, if you like.
Yeah. So James, this is a interesting discussion. We want to continue understand your journey and all this exploration, because this is you, right? We want to explore a bit more on that. But the question, just can we take you a little bit back, as a James Allen as a kid?
I was a kid. Okay.
Yeah, just give us a little bit of background. What your journey to become a explorer.
Okay. So in a sort of very quick thing, when you grow up, anybody who grows up thinks the whole world is growing up in the same way, right? So you kind of like, it took me a while to go, that was kind of unique. And so I grew up in, my dad was an expat oil and gas, and we lived in a little jungle village in Nigeria.
All right.
So I grew up there for 8 years in this jungle village where there are, most people are Nigerian. There's a few expats like me. We didn't have any. We had one teacher who taught the preschoolers, but any of the education up to grade 6 was taught by mums in a room probably the size of this. So we had benches for grade 1 and 2, another bench for 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and they would teach and give a syllabus, and that was kind of my education. I thought everybody was kind of doing that. And we had some monkeys that would come out of the jungle, and they would come in. They would come into my class and hug us and hold us, and that was it. And then we would holiday there too. So I didn't know there were televisions and those things until I was like 1980, so quite late. And telephones, I kind of knew they were there, but they didn't mean anything to me. And I grew up sort of wild kid, if you like, in this tiny village. I then came to Australia in about 1980. And I was stunned by the number of like white people here. I was like, because I hadn't seen any. I thought there were like 5 of us in the world, and everybody else,
Yeah.
So of course I came to Melbourne. I was like, what? Who put all these guys on the earth? And so I had all these sort of things. And I went to school in Melbourne. I had a great education. Not necessarily what you would. It was great education because I needed discipline, and it gave me discipline. And I realized that if I worked hard, I could do well, but actually I had a tendency to slack. So I needed someone to say, do this, otherwise you get a detention. And I didn't want detentions because I love sport. So, so I did that. And then started up a rock climbing club at school, purely because I didn't have any money to climb. So 2 of us started this rock climbing club. And then the headmaster, after a while, said, "Look, a club means more than 2 people." so we had to build this thing into a club. And then I went to Melbourne Uni, where I did. I worked on rigs across Australia in various places: Northwest Shelf, Cooperaramunga Basin, roughnecking, and that was a good eye opener for working with understanding that the poorer 30% of society has a different way. There's another business.
Yeah.
The business that I'd been seeing was a very official tax-paying business. But when you work in very rough situations, I think I was the only one that hadn't been to prison for like 6 years. So everybody had been to prison. In fact, my cohort was Marcus, had just come out of prison for strangling his girlfriend to death. And so they were all into drugs and arms smuggling and different things. And I realized there's this whole other economy that I hadn't been exposed to. So that was quite early on. I then finished earth sciences. I then worked on the down the Gippsland Basin for a bit, which is an incredible place. And I worked on a very, very far out rig, an exploration rig. And there, all the helicopters used to leave. I don't know if they still do because the water's so cold. It was like Apocalypse Now. You get 40 to 60 choppers just take off and just bank around. It was a really spectacular thing. Anyway, so I worked out there for a bit. Then I got a job. Then I went to climbed Everest.
Okay.
And straight after that, I got a scholarship to go study in England at Cambridge, studied economics there, and then studied polar studies. My interest always was Antarctica, global warming. I'd written a paper on that. It was kind of coming through, and the polar regions of the Earth are kind of like the visual barometers of the Earth, because of course the ice melts or grows and those things, and the real glaciology and oceanography and meteorological as well as geological research is really being done in those spaces. So I became an expert in polar research then. I then myself worked in oil and gas in the North Sea, and then then all around the world. And then left that, and a complete transition, moved across to retail.
Yep.
And from there, I worked as an executive in Walmart, which is a big retailer, guys, that you would know. They'd bought a company in the UK, and I ended up being their new formats guy. I kind of didn't understand retail at all. It was kind of like super basic for me. And I guess that sometimes when you are very ignorant, you can ask the ignorant question that everybody wants to ask. And if you say it with confidence, because you're not arrogant, because you really just don't know.
No, you need to know.
And I made a lot of friends at the senior executive level who always had these same questions, but they couldn't do it. So I was very fortunate. There's a guy called Lee Scott, an amazing retailer who ran Walmart Global America. And he then took me under his wing. And basically I got schooled in a very good retailer. And from there, then I left and got into consultancy in London. And then from there I ended up being put into a family retailing business where I ran a company, 28,000 people I looked after, and it had 2 billion turnover. And it was a big business. We opened 200 stores while I was there, made a lot of money. And then came to Australia, worked for Woolworths for a few years. And then I really wanted to set up my own business online in hardware. It's kind of when we were sort of starting to get to know each other. And that went really well. Then I went through a divorce. That didn't go too well. And so in that process, I'd had 5 kids. And that's when I started. Then I was at that point able to draw a line. And that was a change in strategy for me. Up until that point, I've been following kind of like a career path and a progression that I figured was right and people wanted me to follow. You know, it was like it's socially acceptable. They're company branded, people knew about. I could talk about it at a party and people go, Walmart, I know who they are. Shell, consultancy. And then I sort of got there and I realized I've always wanted to go to space because I believe that space is the ticket to world peace. I think if you can have something bigger than local, if you start finding life somewhere else outside, then people are going to go, you know, we can slap our handbags together, but ultimately we should really have it. You know, we should have a phone call to North Korea. Somebody should have the bat phone that if they happen to land in North Korea, we know that they're coming. So I always wanted to find organisms outside Earth and use that and work up in space. So when I was kind of on the streets and in my car, I kind of was like, I'm training for space. I'm in a TARDIS. So every night I'd go into my little car and go, this is when I have that interview and they say, James, you haven't gone to NASA. You're not an engineer. You know, why should you come to space? And I'm like, well, I've been training. I've done a year and a half in a capsule. You know, that's what you need to go there. I know what it's like to live in confined spaces as well as the other stuff. So that kind of got me on the journey of what's my purpose. And we spoke a bit about, I then started working on myself. And
so James, I mean, that's amazing. Like, you know, bit of a, like extraordinary again. I'm going to that same word, extraordinary journey, roller coaster, I guess, you know. But when you're young, anyone actually influence you to become like explorer? Like, you know.
Look, yes, parents. I think I had really great parents who didn't ever tell me what to do, but they were great role models. A solid family relationship for me, that gave me a good foundation. Now I haven't given that to my kids, and it's a regret I have. But that was something I look back at they met and married. My mum and dad met and married in 10 days. They were devoted to each other forever. It was kind of like this. They were just there for each other, and they both had their not separate lives, but they did separate things and they took their roles. So that's. You know, they were sort of the role models. I didn't know everybody around me was successful, but I would say they were all successful, but nobody was rich. So there was never anybody around me that we measured success as money or assets. I remember my mum actually grew up they didn't have any money. They were, you know, like came from, I guess, working middle class, you'd call it. And they came from New Zealand. And I remember my uncle telling me and then seeing photos of the house they grew up in, which kind of defined my mum, which because they couldn't travel, he built the house and built all the stuff in the house, and every room was a different country. Yeah. So they would travel. They said, we can't afford to travel, but we can travel in our house. So the dining room would be like Switzerland, and the kitchen was like Morocco, and the bedroom would be like Spain, and somewhere else would be like Finland. So they had these... You know, they thought they were traveling. And I think that's kind of how I grew up, always having this feeling of exploring and being allowed to explore. And I remember my mother used to sit down, not all the time, but like on Sundays on a week, we'd sit down and have a family dinner. And she would sit there and she would go, so James, I've got a brother and sister who are there too. She'd say, what's the most dangerous thing you've done today?
Yep. Oh, wow. So
I would be, and you knew this question was coming, right? Yeah. You knew pretty much every Sunday you'd be going, oh God. Mum's going to ask me what I've done.
So they encourage.
So you'll be up a tree and you'll be like, I don't want to jump. It's too far. Yeah. But like, I think I can make it. And it's better than having to do something else, you know. You jump, and then you have to talk it through. How was it? What did you learn? And I remember falling out of a tree, like trying to jump out of this tree, and I tripped as I fell, and bang, 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 all the way down. I suddenly found myself on the bottom, going, "Holy moly, how did that happen?" And, you know, you learned how to land, how to fall. You learned to lean into the risk. And you actually learned what are the things worth being dangerous and doing. Yep. So for me, it was adventure. And so when I look back at role models, that was kind of a role model question in a weird way that, you know, this day and age, parenting 101 probably wouldn't ask kids, what's the most dangerous thing you've done? But it helped to lead into it. And then when I look back at the books that I read, I mean, we must have read as kids dozens of books because it was kind of thing you did in English and history of read a book and write an essay on it and remember a few quotes. I can't remember any of those, but I do. But I do remember Ranulph Fiennes' Living Dangerously, and I remember reading that book and going, that's the life I want. I want to be in the special forces. I want to I want to travel around the world. I want to explore. That's what I want. And I remember reading that book and going, that's the life I want.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't know how to do that life because no one I know is in the special forces and no one, it's kind of, I don't know what to do there. And as life worked out, I nearly got into the special forces. I didn't apply, but I pivoted because of quite rightly. My ex was like, "If you go there, I'm going to leave you. And if you go to the military, our relationship's over." I was like, "Okay, well, let's not do that." But I actually look at it now, and I think of the training and discipline and all the things that that you get in an army, or it sort of appeals to someone like me.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So your parents kind of encourage you to take risk. Very early age, right?
They did, yeah, and they did, and also it has continued. It wasn't something they'd read in a book and they just a throwaway. So even now, my father is the greatest role model in my life, and he will give the greatest advice without giving advice.
Yeah.
You kind of by articulating it out loud, you're going, man, now I've spoken about this.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dumb idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he won't say, yes, it's a dumb idea. He might say, okay, what's your next best idea? And so it sort of move you around, or he was the one that said to me when I was sort of floundering, going, God, I don't know what to do. My marriage has collapsed, yada, yada, yada. He said, you know what? A man needs a purpose. He said, women don't necessarily need purpose so much. They have emotional friends and networks. A man needs just a focus and a purpose, whether that's true or not, but it was right for me. And I said, well, I've got this kind of thing. And he said, well, why don't you tell people you're doing the 7 summits? And I said, I don't really want to do the 7 summits. They're not technical routes. I like doing hard technical new routes. He said, doesn't matter. Like, it will just get people know the 7 summits and they'll go, oh, he's training for the 7 summits, and they'll move away. And I was like, okay. So he said, this can be part of your purpose and you can get fit towards your purpose by doing this other thing. So he kind of encouraged me to do that.
Yeah.
So
I just want to go back to like what you said about, not being a bubble wrap child essentially, and like taking risks, because it just paints a picture in my head of the first time I went to your place. Like Barney invited me over to hang out, rock up to your house, and you had like a flying fox in the backyard, a rock climbing wall, and we got
did we have the high wires up at that point?
Yeah. And then you let us like walk down to the shops on our own, and I was thinking, man,
and we look like idiot parents.
I just remember thinking like, wow, kids are allowed to do this? Like, whoa, like we would never, I couldn't even walk the 5 minutes to school. And then I just remember going, there is so much
freedom.
Yeah, freedom. And it's a great lesson as well. It's like to learn to take risks early, and also just to have that space to go and explore. And like, I feel like as young people, you learn by doing, right?
Freedom to expand yourself, I mean,
it's having the ability to being like, there's a great life lesson, which is around the elders teaching you how to fail well.
Yep.
So if you can teach someone how to fail well, then actually all we want is the next generation to be better than us, for the world to move further forward. I want everybody that's coming up to do more than me.
Yep.
And so I was taught, luckily I skydived early on, and I remember they were taught how to fall. So they got you up probably wouldn't do it now because there's no health and safety would allow this.
Yep.
But they got us up a ladder at various heights until we're probably as high as this roof has room. So a couple of 3 meters or whatever, or 2.5, 3 meters. So a long way up. And they would teach you how to fall from the top of the ladder. You'd have to jump onto the ground in order to get to the next stage. And keep your legs together, arms, protect your head, and roll. Take the pressure out of it. And so I taught my kids how to do that early on. Like if you fall out of a tree, don't panic, just fall well. The same as if you fail in a business or a venture, is actually, don't look at failing, look at what you learned from it. And so if you, as an elder, can teach you, there is no straight line to success. Early on, you need to decide when you go to Luna Park or the fun fair, are you the type of person that wants to go on the wiggly waggly roller coaster, or do you want to go on the just going around train?
Yeah.
Both are correct. Both are having fun. But if you want to go, if you like the roller coaster, then that's great. if you can live a life like a roller coaster with the highs and the lows and put your hands up in the air and go, I'm falling and I'm losing all my money, woohoo,
Yeah.
and just surrender into that,
Yeah.
then you have this belief that because you're strapped in and the elders have looked after you, that you know that at some point there's going to be, like it's going to be a down and then it's going to go chuk chuk. Then it's going to be like, slog up, and you'll be able to look around and slow thing. So that's the life that I know that I am living.
Yeah.
And actually, because I've had great elders and leadership, I've been able to, such as, what's the most dangerous thing you've done today, was actually framed in a way that they were there to support, that if you did something, you'd talk it through. What did you learn? What's it, all that sort of feedback. So.
Yeah. Do you think that adventure, like, all this exploration, help you in terms of your personal life as a person for growth, as well as business life as a businessman?
No. I think as a person, yes, of course it does. It makes you a stronger person individually.
Yeah. You're talking about failing fast.
I think
and,
all those things, of course, the number of life lessons you get from knowing of surviving.
Yeah.
Like the number of times I should have died is kind of ridiculous. And each time is I want my mum and I want to go home. And I'm so I don't want to actually get to that situation, but I keep getting to that situation, and you have to keep pushing through it, and that's that perseverance, and that gives you resilience and gives you a whole lot of stuff that that you can move forward. However, I say it's difficult on relationships, and it's difficult on social settings, because when you're so confident in what you want to do, you can actually forsake relationships because they're not as important as the ultimate purpose. So it does become hard. So for instance, I'm back for a couple of weeks. I've got a friend, who wants to see me, and I'm like, well, I don't know, Pakistan might come next week, and then I want to go skiing, and there's this route I want to do in the and it's kind of really hard from that. Whereas it's so much easier to stay and get sort of have that more comfortable life. I wouldn't say sucked into it, it's always a choice, but having a choice of not to live your purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you know that you're floundering. I think when you start watching a lot of television, I mean, it's funny, I haven't had TV for 20 odd years, but the owners of the house brought a TV back in, kind of had it there, and I find myself watching cricket. I love freaking cricket. So I'm there, and I'm like, I've just watched like 5 hours of cricket. What's going on?
Yeah.
There's a lot of distraction in the modern day world. Telephones,
sure.
Instagram. I don't really on those things, but a lot of time that can drive you away from your purpose. And you feel like you're making life is moving forward, but suddenly it's another Monday, and you go, what did I do last week? So I think by setting, having good discipline towards your progress, I think one of the things worth mentioning as well is the measurement of success, because we started off on what is the measurement of success, and to me. And I think one of the great, of course, there's tokens of success, things that publicly people know. So 7 Summits would be something people know, or those things. But that's never really your driving measure of a purpose. I think it's a good social proof. How much money you have in the bank. I think there'll be some people that'll go, I want to get rich. I want to have a big car. And then they get their car and they're kind of like, I kind of want another car. But they can't say that to people, because it's like, you've got your car already. That was your target. So I've actually realized that the way that I now measure success, it took me a long time to get to this point, and it's not like a clear numeric number, is actually I look at how life is treating me. I actually spend a lot of time working out as I'm traveling. Are things working out? Maybe not smoothly, but are they working out efficiently?
Yeah.
So and what am I seeing, and what am I feeling, and what's happening? So the whole bird poo on the shoulder type of thing to make you aware of what you're doing. It's kind of, if I'm seeing a lot of people honking horns or angry or wearing black, dark, not looking at each other, I'm like, what is happening in me that I'm manifesting that in my life? So I'll sit and I'll look at a measurement and I'll go, or like my Pakistan visa, it's sticky. Now where I'm going to is a really dangerous place. I could push it and it might come through, but I'm not overly pushing. Like I haven't bought my plane ticket yet because I'm not overly committing, because I'm like, if it's sticky and it's a bit hard, if I want something too much, then I put myself in a situation that's dangerous. So my measurement of success, of whether or not I'm achieving my success or my purpose, is, are things working out? Maybe not the way I want them to work out, but is it does it feel right? A bit like if you're surfing, or if you're, any type of sport, skiing or playing cricket or throwing a ball, if just kind of like, well, it just feels natural, or casting a line, or it just feels it's working. But if actually things are going wrong, like there's, say you're fishing and the wind comes up and the storm comes up and you still want to catch that fish, you're pushing it, then that I'm failing in my measurement of success. So I look at what's happening around me to see if I'm gaining success in my life.
Yeah.
That's how I measure it.
Yeah. So my next question, you're talking about relationship, right? I mean, when you're a adventure explorer, you have a purpose. You want to do things more and more, right? I don't know. It could be addiction, right? And how that's gonna reflect on your relationship, like, personally, your family and your kids, and
Yeah, and initially it was really hard because I was kind of doing something weird.
Yeah.
And the fastest, easy way to gain a relationship is to pay for stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I want an iPhone. No, got an argument. Buy it. Things are lovely.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, that's a fast way. But without money, you then have to work out another way.
Yep.
So I then realized way too late, it's a lesson I wish I'd learned as a kid, which was, when you're a parent, I was feeling, I don't know if everybody feels this way, I was feeling like I was the parent, and they were my children. They had to follow me. We are going to the beach now. They would come to the beach, When I stepped out of that role and became, on my own and split up, I was like, I actually now need to be worthwhile for my kids to get off their iPhone and come with me.
Yeah.
So if my kids weren't seeing me, initially I got frustrated, but then I was like, actually, they're not seeing me because I am not the best version of me. I need to be so attractive to them that they actually want to come to dinner with me. They want to come to the movies because they're like, I want that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And people get attracted as a parent, you forget that you need to be, by default, you become the hero in their life, but actually you need to earn that right. So it's been really good for me to work on earning that right. So relationships now, initially it was really hard, but I kept looking at it as a measurement of my own success. Am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
That I get attracted to people who have a drive for their sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I can only assume other people do. So if I really start to live my life and just say, I am traveling, I'm doing this is where I'm going, then soon that will become attractive to the kids to go, gosh, Dad's off to Pakistan. He's just been to Ethiopia. He's just come back from Russia. He's just been in India. He's kind of, I want to understand what that's like.
Yep.
And so my kids over the last 4 years have started to ask if they can come on trips with me.
Excellent.
And my second youngest, who I hadn't connected with for 4 years, it was a long time. And out of the blue, he just texted me and said, you know what, I want what Barney, my eldest, Dylan's mate. And I said, I want what Barney's had in his life. I'm missing out. Like he'd gone through his kind of,
So they realizing,
there. And it's like,
it's
I'm
important.
getting too old. I want to go there. So we went to India and to Kashmir and went
Nice.
skiing up there and had a great trip. And now we're really connected and we're doing other trips. And because he's kind of like, I need to learn and I want to be part of this. So yeah, my relationships were based on not somebody wanting me. It's actually me going, I need to be worthy of people wanting me. And that was a good change in my mindset. So it helps me. That does help me get up in the morning and go, oh, I'm going to go for a snorkel out there because I want to do it, but I know it's cold, but actually it makes me a better person. And I'm going to go and see what's out in the water. And I'm going to learn about, if I really want to create world peace, I need to know everything about air, land, and sea and all the animals that live there. And, one of my current things is I talk to tourist agents about or governments about, world peace. I think one of my strategies is to achieve that through, if the tourist dollar in a country is more than the weapons and war dollar, then they'll want people to be tourists. Yep. So it's kind of like if more people get attracted to Ethiopia for the natural beauty and come as tourists, then all the war, I think, will go away because people go, we're all making money. Don't, all this
Don't
civil
ruin
war
this.
stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't care about politics and stuff. Like, we're making good money.
Yeah.
And all the warlords who then say, no, we can
Yep.
sell tanks and drones and stuff, they go, yeah, but that's less than what we're earning from tourism.
Hmm.
So if I can grow tourism, make people do more hikes and get out in the nature and see how wonderful the world is.
And I
then they can
appreciate
do it.
each other's culture.
See the cultures
See, this
and-
is a funny thing, right? Unless you travel to a destination that unknown, you don't really understand how people live. And saying that you and I traveled together once, and
Yeah, that's great.
Oh man, I can't even believe how different you are. So this is something I want to share. Like we kind of we were out till like 4 or 5 a.m. and then 6 a.m. James called me and said, "Hey Jam, let's meet at the gym 6 a.m. So less than 2 hours sleep." So that energy, it's amazing. How did you? Like get up and go, like create that energy that, I mean, yeah, it's inspiring.
Yeah, like I people do say I have a lot of energy. I think when you're doing what you love,
Yeah.
energy comes, and I think that's it's kind of. I know times when I'm slacking myself, I watch cricket and I get tired, and that's I
Yeah.
kind of give myself permission to do that.
Yeah.
I come here and it's like relaxing, and this is my downtime.
Yeah.
But I also need to do other stuff. Sleep is super important, and I didn't realize how important it was until I went crossing Greenland. And I crossed Greenland. It's 28 days across Greenland, and there we broke things into a very methodical. I had a really great professional leader, and it was like, and in Antarctica we did the same thing, but it's really Greenland where we broke it into 888.
Yeah.
When you have these big polar crossings, everything's the same, mundane pretty much. But 8 hours of work,
Yeah.
8 hours of resting, eating, bits in between,
Yeah.
and then that leaves an 8 hours of sleep.
Wow.
And you protect your 8 hours of sleep.
Yep.
So even if you're behind your time, you keep your 8 hours
Yeah.
sacred. And that's really important for those, if you're having a long-term goal, that's day
Discipline.
after day, to have that discipline. I do find when I go in country, like we were in Cambodia and other
Yep.
places, that I'm so excited to be there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
it's a
know
new
that
country,
it's
yeah.
a new country. There's a finite, there's a bookend. There's a plane in and plane out.
Yeah.
And I know that I don't like, why would I want to
Why would I
miss that?
sleep? Yeah.
Why would I sleep? Like I'm going to be everywhere
Yeah.
because I can sleep on the plane going back
Yeah.
and this. And
I want to
did,
talk to people and
yeah. And
Yeah.
I've trained myself. My uncle's been really good at training me on various things in Finland. And I've been working really hard on just having super short, powerful naps.
Yeah.
So I can sleep pretty much anywhere, anytime. And I'm not 100% at it, but you can visualize a number, 7 minutes, 21 minutes, 32 minutes, and pretty much sleep to that.
Wow.
Just go straight into a deep sleep and then wake up like 7-8 minutes later.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's not quite the 8 hours,
Yeah.
but those training yourself in those disciplines, I think it's kind of like a superpower that we will bring in
Yeah.
the next couple of generations. We'll learn these skills
Yeah.
of how to actually gain really powerful micro sleeps. It doesn't get you complete washing your brain and those
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so
Yeah.
I always I do have a tremendous amount of energy, but I think that, so people say, but I think that comes from I just love life.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. You
Yeah,
can probably tell
yeah.
how quickly I'm speaking about these things.
I mean that's the thing. I think because you start talking about your adventures, but then we wanted to talk about other things. I think we should have a separate session talking about James' adventure. Because I think 1 hour session is not going to be sufficient to talk about. I think it would be very useful for us to understand all these journeys. But looking at the time, I know we don't want to take too much of your time as well, James. I know you got a few other things to do. Share us one of the craziest adventures, one out of everything that you've done, and we talk about the rest in another session.
Crazy adventures. Okay, I started. It's not a long adventure, but it's a new hobby. So this time last year. I was up in trying to go to the North Pole again. This time out of Norway. That got cancelled. So I flew across to northern Norway to do some ice diving. Now
Whoa.
I hadn't actually done. I was a PADI instructor, but so I've done the scuba diving area. But I was like, oh, this would be cool. I can.
What's exactly ice diving mean?
So diving under the ice. So I've got this project, this
Jeez.
thing in Antarctica that I found by talking to somebody And I think it's like, oh, I can go scuba diving in Antarctica. But when I started to put the team together, which of course is like ridiculous because it's hugely expensive and all this stuff, it's like, I'm going to be left off the team because you need, like, scuba diving has lots of, it's an engineering tick box thing.
Yeah.
So I learned to scuba dive by just diving with a mate's kit.
Yeah.
And now it's really official, and I'm sure it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but ice diving under the ice with ice equipment is one of the ticks you need to do. But coming from Australia, it's really hard. So I thought, I'm near the Arctic. I'll go up to the Arctic. I'll go ice diving in this place. Went ice diving in the place, and learned. But turns out, it's a place called Plura Valley, which I didn't know at the time because I was just really focused on ice diving course. It's actually also called Death Cave. There's more people have died there than anywhere else, apparently, or something. There was a National Geographic thing on it. And he said, the guy that was there, the guys, they said, oh, you here because of the article? You're an explorer. I'm like, no, I'm here to do this course. I didn't know about the article. Anyway, so we end up diving under the ice. We go under the ice and we're pushing out into a cave. So he said, oh, well, while you're here, do you want to do a cave diving course? Because we've got a cave. And I was like, yeah, well, why not? I can, like I'm doing ice diving. I may as well do cave diving. I hadn't done that before. So I was pushing out into the cave on my course. But I suddenly had a double tank failure. So you have two tanks and both started bubbling. They all froze. And in Australia, if you get stuff in your regulator, it's sand and you purge it. But under ice, when it's so cold, it just freezes solid. So the thing just froze like vampire things out of my regulator. And it just goes it goes from total breathing to suddenly nothing. It's just the whole thing is just frozen. And my mask blew off. And so I'm in this cave with a double tank failure, no oxygen. I couldn't see all the bubbles. The guy in front of me, he was there, but I couldn't see him, and I couldn't see. He would have his regulator, but I couldn't see it and the stuff. But I saw this little, out of the cave. I thought I can see light, and this is where idiot James, having never done ice diving before or cave diving, I was doing the course. I was like, I can swim out to the light. So I swam out to the light. I thought I'm just going to exit.
But
the
you're
cave.
not getting any oxygen at this.
No oxygen, but not too deep. I'm probably 17 meters, 16 meters, something like that.
Still.
So it's still reasonably deep, but I'm not like 30, 40 meters. So I swim out the cave. I'm swimming out the cave, free breathing up. And I get up to where I think is the hole. And I'm kind of, when you've underwater for a long time, you think, relief. And so you sort of let yourself surrender and I'm going to be there. And I go slam into the ice. I'm like, what the hell? I thought this was the whole exit because we'd carved this hole out. But what I hadn't realized is the bubbles under the ice come up and they're like mercury on a table. So they're kind of mirrory. So when I had my no mask on, it looked different from the other light. Light was coming through the whole thing, but that kind of looked like mercury looks like a hole, right? So, but when I touched it, all the bubbles just bubbled away, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And we didn't have a cable going up to the hole because with the mask on, you could see it. So I then was like, and I could see myself in this outer body. At the time, I remember thinking, "This is an outer body moment." We've all seen those movies where there's looking down on the person like this under the ice, and I'm like, "That's me. I'm that person." And anyway, so that's so then I decided. That I didn't have enough oxygen or enough inside me. I saw the hole. I could see the ray of light coming to it, but I realized it was too far for me to get to. And I was not going to make it and I was going to drown. So I remember thinking, do I drown close to the hole so they can drag me out? But I thought, no, I've got so much kit on a big dry suit. It's going to be hard for one person to actually drag me out. And so I turned back and I started swimming back down to try to find my buddy because I knew he would be looking for me, but I would have gone up quickly. So I turned around and started swimming down on the last bit of my breath. And then out of the side, he was behind this sort of rock thing that had gone through. I just saw this regulator in front of me and I just chucked it in my mouth and was like, and then I swam up to the top and he said, dude, that was close. I went, yeah, that was fairly close. So we dusted off and we went back down again. He said, do you want to go back down? I said, too right. I need to go straight back down that hole and we need to do that exercise again. So just let's fill the tanks and go back again.
Wow.
But yeah, so that was like a year ago, I guess. There's lots of stuff like that you make you believe. But if I hadn't done a lot of experiences, I would have probably gone for the hole.
Yep.
There's sometimes in life I've realized you've got to just stop and there's always an answer. There's an answer for every single problem, no matter how hard it is. you just got to control your busy mind and actually stop and think. And sometimes the answer isn't going for the obvious hole.
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is to go back and find support or have belief in the system that your friend's going to be there to support you. And, you know, that can manifest its way in finding funding for your project. It can be manifest its way in belief in education. When you're at school, that you've gone through a process, you will know the end product's going to happen. So that's.
Oh, thank you
lots
so
of
much
stuff.
for sharing that. That's really spooky. Like,
Just on that though, like, do you, from your perspective, do you realize that's crazy? Because like, I just want to know, are you desensitized to the like
reality.
incredible things that you do?
No, it doesn't seem crazy for me because when I heard that hole that I was going down had some bacteria in it that was deep and shouldn't be there because it's dark and it's cold and all that sort of stuff. That was like, I need to learn how to cave dive so I can see that bacteria, because if bacteria can live there, it can live in other planets under ice. And they're testing this. They're testing the stuff under some of the Europa and stuff places. So for me, it wasn't. It was like it's my purpose.
Yeah.
And along that purpose, I'm going to have things that really test me, and so I don't see it as like crazy. It would be crazy if I didn't have a purpose on it and it was just a thing, a story. But it's like, no, that was right. That was part of my journey, and I learned a lot about that I can now train other people to be aware of. So I kind of think these things came to me, it worked out, and it worked out for a reason. So yeah, I don't see it as crazy or scary. You don't look for those situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, they happen, and the training that you've done and all the other lessons help you through, and you just achieve more because you're able to analyze things in a different way. So
yeah.
And do you, like, how do you approach these hard things? Like for most normal people, like that's just not even on the cards. How do you?
Yeah, but it's like the big wave surfers, right? They started surfing tiny waves. And it's like
That's experience as well. He developed that over the years.
So, you know, like the part of the problem I think we have, that I would hate to be a kid at school now where you're looking on Instagram and someone's jumping off a cliff with a wingsuit on and going through a valley, and people go, I want to do that. Because there's nothing that says, by the way, this guy's had 20,000 jumps or probably 2,000 minimum jumps, which is a lot of jumps, you know, and takes da-da-da-da. You forget that the foreplay of life is lost in a lot of the hero shots that we see now. And I think that there's actually a lot of fun in that stuff. There's fun in going camping with your mates about the back of a car, and then you forget the tent, and then you forget a stove, but you learn how to make a fire.
Yeah.
You know, all that sort of self-discovery is actually knowledge is gained through experience. I think Einstein said that. You know, it's not gained from books; it's gained from experience. So
doing things.
things. So as he said, you know, it's kind of the more that you can put yourself out there, the more that you can do stuff. And if you're doing it in the space that you want to do it, you'll soon find out, do you really want to go in cold water or not go in cold water?
Yeah.
Because life is too short in a way. So you will only gravitate to the things that lead to your purpose. You know, so spending time to do something like this would be, you know.
James, this is awesome. You know, I mean, we can stay here and talk about this stuff whole day, right? I don't know, you believe it or not, we gone over an hour.
Oh wow!
Talking about this stuff. You know, so I think we should wrap it up, and we'll have another session some point later. I mean, one last question from my end, Dylan. You might have other questions. Do you have any regret as James Allen? You know, I could have done something differently, or I could have done that, or, you know, like...
No, I have no regrets in my life.
So you're happy as it is?
Yeah, I have moments where when I had regrets when I was pushing stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, the North Pole, it's cancels. It doesn't matter. I look at failure being Mr. Happy is how I look at things. I always ask myself, when something that I want doesn't work out for whatever reason, I will say, what can I do that's even better than what I was going to do?
Yeah.
So I always stop and go, okay, I'm really disappointed that didn't work, but there must be something in my life, if I'm going to grow my life, that's even better than, say, going to the North Pole.
Yep.
So I then regroup, I'll look at it, and I'll say, if I do these things, that's actually better than my regrets. So I just move on positive. So I don't look back and regret stuff. I have a lot of life lessons. I made a huge number of mistakes.
Yeah.
All of those things, you know, all the mistakes I've learned from and got me right here in front of 3 microphones that I never thought I would be doing when I was a kid, right? So I don't have regrets in life, but I do have I've made a lot of mistakes and I have a lot of lessons.
That's really good answer, because you can see when you're talking to successful people, they don't have regrets because they try and fail. They don't consider that as a regret.
No.
Because
It's a lesson.
It's a lesson. It's a lesson.
It's a gift.
It's
it's a gift.
absolutely. It's an opportunity to learn, right? So that's really good that you put that way.
Yeah.
Instead of I have regrets. Like it's really good.
I want to link back to the first question and ask you. Now we've
Dylan,
talked
your
about.
dad wants time. Did you?
Yeah. No, I'm wrapping up here. We talked through your story and your definition of success. Today, do you feel successful?
Yes. I'm alive.
Definitely, certainly.
That puts
That
yeah.
that is success.
Yeah.
I and this will be time for another time, but I've been at that point where I wanted to jump off a cliff and do it all, and I realized that is freedom. That actually now just living
Yeah.
is successful.
Yeah.
So anybody who is alive today and able to breathe fits my definition of success.
Yeah.
So I feel successful because I'm just living, and then I've got the opportunity. What I choose to do with that's separate.
Yeah.
But I'm successful because I'm alive today.
I love that. And just wrapping up, I want to touch on some of the key things which I think you've talked about as your ingredients for success. So like the first one was purpose. Having a really clear purpose, and we've spoke about it before. It's almost like vision, right? And everything you do, you're working towards your purpose. And the other one is authenticity. You are yourself. You don't beat around the bush. I'm James Allen. This is what I do. And I think that authenticity comes across in relationships and the people you're around. And then the other one, maybe like you didn't directly talk about, but I think it's the importance of environment. Like you spoke about when you were young, there was the different countries were different houses in your different rooms in your house, and going and working as a roughnecker and doing all these different things has put you in different environments, which has ultimately shaped who you are. And I think that's a really important thing, going out and putting yourself in different environments to get the lessons from different places, because you could stay in your bubble and you'd only learn, if you had stayed in, was it Nigeria?
Yeah.
You would have thought you were one of the only white people in existence, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
going out and
You're the albino.
Yeah.
yeah. And then probably the biggest one is taking failure in your stride.
Yeah.
And, looking at it as a real lesson and a gift rather than something that's negative.
Yeah, that's positivity, right? So that's something that I know you for, right? Your positivity. So that's definitely a factor in your story. Yeah.
And then the last one is just, as you said, just going out and doing things.
Yeah.
Experience is where we grow. And I think the more you go out and try, even if you fail, as you said, you're taking on lessons. So I think that's a really important thing. I think that's all I
Thank you, James. For your time. It's amazing story. We couldn't actually.
we could talk for hours.
Talk hours. We really want to listen to your adventures and like understand a bit more.
So for people who want to hear more about you, where can they find more about your work? Where can they follow you?
Well, I've got a website.
Yep.
So jamesallenexplorer.com. I was very frightened about pushing my name out there. So the only way to do that is to push your name out there. So
accountability.
I am just going to put my name on the website. It's not called Explore.
Yeah.
It's my name. So jamesallenexplorer.com, and you'll see a little bit about me there. I have an Instagram, James Allen Explorer. I also have a private Instagram where you see more of me, and that's James Allen Explorer TV. That's $100 to join, and all that money goes to the charities that I see around the world.
Awesome.
So I try to make money from my Instagram posts. I do pretty much a daily post, and I might put that on YouTube. I'm not sure, but yeah. So that's where you can see like the 45 days in Russia, which I've just done when no one else does that sort of thing, and a whole lot of the Ethiopian trips and the India trips, and you can get in more into the detail, and people ask me questions. So
yeah, awesome. And by the time you're listening to this, Jam is probably just about to do the CEO sleep out to raise money for Vinnie's. So if you haven't already, please check out the link in the description and try and support his cause.
Well done, buddy.
It'd be awesome. And on that note, James, thank you so much. Really, really do appreciate all your time. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you, James.